I built my parents a house by the lake, so my father could walk again. 6 months later, I pulled into the driveway and saw a stranger taking pictures of it. My father was standing on the porch, confused, asking questions no one was answering. And that's the moment I realized. Someone was trying to take it away. Not just the house. His independence. His dignity. His life. My name is Megan. I am an accountant. I work with numbers every day. I notice patterns. Small details. Tiny changes that most people ignore. And that habit saved my father. But to understand how everything started falling apart, you need to understand him. My dad's name is Tom. He is the kind of man who never asked for help. Not once. Not even when he should have. He worked construction for over 40 years. His hands built homes for other people, while his own body slowly broke down. His knees went first. Then his heart. Nothing dramatic. Nothing loud. Just quiet damage over time. He stopped climbing stairs. Stopped driving far. Stopped doing things he used to love. But he never complained. He just became quieter. One day, I saw something I couldn't ignore. He picked up his coffee cup with both hands. Not because it was heavy. Because his hands were shaking. He saw me notice. I saw him look away. And we both pretended nothing happened. That night, I went home and ordered a different cup. Wider. Heavier at the bottom. Easier to hold. The next time I visited, I didn't explain it. I just placed it on the counter. He picked it up, held it with one hand, looked at me, and nodded. That was enough. That's how we always communicated. No speeches. Just understanding. My mother, Linda, was different. She carried everything quietly. Doctor appointments. Medications. Driving. Cooking. All of it. No one thanked her. Not even me. One afternoon, I found her in the kitchen, standing still, hands pressed against the counter, eyes closed. Not crying, just holding herself up. When she noticed me, she straightened instantly. "I'm fine," she said. But she wasn't. That was the moment something changed inside me. I went home that night, and for the first time, I had a clear plan. I was going to build them a new life. A better one. I spent the next 2 years working more than I ever had. Late nights. Endless spreadsheets. Every extra dollar had a purpose. Every hour had meaning. I wasn't just saving money. I was building something. A solution. I found a small piece of land in northern Michigan. Quiet. Peaceful. A lake that stayed still in the mornings. The kind of place where time slows down. And then, I started building. But not just any house. Every detail mattered. The doorways were wider than normal. Wide enough for a wheelchair, if that day ever came. Even saying that word felt heavy. But I said it anyway. Because reality doesn't wait for comfort. There were no steps. Anywhere. Not at the entrance. Not between rooms. The floors were soft but stable. Nothing slippery. Nothing dangerous. The bathroom had support bars. A bench in the shower. The kitchen counters were lower, so my mom wouldn't have to bend. But the most important part was the path to the dock. Flat. Smooth. Steady. Because my dad had grown up near water. Fishing. Working. Living on docks. And for years, he hadn't been able to walk to one. Too many stairs. Too many obstacles. So I removed them. All of them. I wanted him to walk to the water again. On his own. No one holding his arm. No one guiding him. Just him. I finished the house in early spring. I didn't tell them. I wanted it to be a surprise. On their 40th anniversary, I drove them there. They thought we were going out for lunch. When we pulled into the driveway, my dad just stared at the house. Then he looked at me. No words. He stepped out of the car, walked slowly to the door, opened it, and stepped inside. He looked around, at the wide spaces, the open layout, the details, everything designed for him. He turned toward me, his eyes filled with tears. But he didn't speak. He walked through the back door, out onto the porch, and then toward the path. I didn't follow. That moment wasn't mine. I watched from a distance. As he walked, slowly, carefully, but on his own, step by step, all the way to the dock. He stood there for a long time, looking at the water, like he was remembering something he thought he had lost forever. My mom stood beside me, her hand on my arm. "You built this for him," she whispered. I shook my head. "I built it for both of you." He came back after a while, reached for my hand, squeezed it. Still no words. But I didn't need any. They moved in 2 weeks later. And for 6 months, everything was good. Better than good. My dad started walking to the dock every morning. Sometimes all the way. Sometimes halfway. But it didn't matter. He was moving. Choosing. Living. My mom started smiling again. Small smiles. Real ones. The kind that come when you're not exhausted anymore. Evenings were quiet. Peaceful. The porch light came on every night at sunset. My dad installed it himself. Slowly. Carefully. It was the first thing he had built in years. And then, 6 months later, everything changed. It started with one phone call. "Megan," my dad said. His voice sounded off. "Your brother is here." I froze. "What do you mean here?" "At the house." I didn't ask anything else. I just drove. When I arrived, there was a rental car in the driveway. The front door was open. And inside, I could hear his voice. Calm. Friendly. Familiar. The kind of voice you use when you want something. I stepped inside. And the moment I saw him standing there, I knew. He didn't come back for a visit. He came back for a reason. I just didn't know what it was yet. But I was about to find out. And when I did, it would change everything. Ethan stayed. At first, everything looked normal. He smiled. He joked. He acted like a son who finally came home. But I work with patterns. And something didn't feel right. It started with small questions. Too small for most people to notice. But not for me. That evening, we were sitting on the porch. My dad was watching the water. Ethan leaned back in his chair and said casually, "Dad, do you really walk to the dock alone every morning?" My dad answered simply, "Yes." There was a pause. Then Ethan said, "Is that safe?" It sounded like concern. It wasn't. It was doubt. Planted carefully. Quietly. Like a seed. My dad didn't respond. He just looked at the lake. The next morning, he didn't walk to the dock. He sat on the porch instead, holding his coffee, looking at the water from a distance. That happened again the day after. And the day after that, I watched him slowly give up the one thing he had taken back. Not because he couldn't do it, but because someone made him question if he should. A few days later, Ethan tried something else. My dad was putting on his shoes, getting ready to go outside. Ethan smiled. "Let me come with you," he said warmly. It sounded kind, helpful, supportive. My dad didn't know how to say no. So he nodded. They walked together. But Ethan held his elbow the entire time. By the time they reached the dock, my dad wasn't walking anymore. He was being guided, controlled, and something changed in his face. I saw it. That quiet confidence he had started rebuilding. It disappeared. He didn't walk alone again after that. Not while Ethan was there. That's when I started paying closer attention. Not just to what Ethan said, but to what he was doing. One afternoon, I walked into the kitchen. His laptop was open on the table. He was outside on a call. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the screen was right there. An email. Subject line in red. Final notice. Below it, just one line visible. Outstanding balance. I closed the laptop. I didn't say anything. But now I understood something important. He didn't come home because he missed us. He came because he had nowhere else to go. And that changed everything. From that moment, I listened differently. Every word. Every sentence. Every question. And I started noticing a pattern. Is that safe? Is that responsible? Do you feel comfortable doing that? At first, they sounded harmless. But together, they built something. A narrative. A story. That my dad wasn't capable anymore. That he needed help. That he couldn't be trusted with his own life. By the third week, Ethan stopped being subtle. That night at dinner, he placed a folder on the table. Right between the plates. "I've been doing some research," he said casually. No one touched it. He opened it himself. "Photos. Brochures. Numbers. Assisted living facilities," he said. "Just options." My mom froze. My dad reached for the folder. Looked at it for a few seconds. Then stood up. Walked to the kitchen drawer. Placed the folder inside. And closed it. His hand was shaking. No one spoke for the rest of dinner. But the message was clear. This wasn't about options. It was about control. That night, my dad came to the porch where I was sitting. He didn't say anything at first. He just handed me a folded piece of paper. I opened it, and my stomach dropped. Power of attorney. His name already printed. Ethan's name, listed as the agent. Ready. Prepared. All it needed was a signature. "Where did you get this?" I asked quietly. My dad looked tired. "He gave it to me," he said. "This afternoon." My chest tightened. "What did he say?" "That it's just a precaution," my dad replied. "In case something happens." I looked at the paper again, then back at him. "Did you sign it?" He shook his head. No. He paused. Then added something that stayed with me. He was watching my face, he said slowly. Like he was waiting for me to be tired enough to say yes. I felt something cold settle inside me. Because now everything made sense. The questions. The doubt. The pressure. This wasn't concern. This was a plan. Step by step. Carefully built. To take control of everything. Including him. You did the right thing, I said firmly. He nodded. But his eyes looked different. Hurt. Not angry. Just hurt. My own son, he whispered. I didn't have an answer for that. Because there wasn't one. The next morning, things got worse. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard voices outside. My dad talking to someone. Confused. Can I help you? He asked. I walked out onto the porch and saw a man standing in the yard. Clipboard. Camera. Taking pictures of the house. The front. The back. The dock. Everything. What are you doing? My dad asked again. The man smiled politely. I'm here for the appraisal. My heart stopped. What appraisal? My dad said. I stepped forward. Who hired you? The man checked his notes. Ethan, he replied. 2 days earlier. Without telling anyone. Without asking. I looked at him. Please leave, I said calmly. He hesitated, then packed his things and walked away. I went inside. Ethan was in the kitchen. Relaxed. Like nothing was wrong. Why is there an appraiser on our property? I asked. He didn't even flinch. We need to know what it's worth, he said. It's responsible. I stared at him. You don't call an appraiser unless you're thinking about selling. He shrugged. I'm not saying we sell. Pause. But look at this place. It's too big for them. The dock is dangerous. It would make more sense to move them somewhere safer. I felt my anger rise. This house is the only place Dad can move freely, I said. The only place he can live without fear. You don't get to decide that. He looked at me, and for the first time, the mask dropped. This isn't just about them, he said. It's about fairness. I frowned. Fairness? Yes, he said. You built this place, and now you control everything. I'm their son too. Pause. Where is my name? The question hung in the air. Heavy. Uncomfortable. But I didn't hesitate. You weren't here, I said. When I was working 2 jobs. When I was planning every detail. When I was trying to make their lives easier. You were gone. His expression hardened. I needed help, he said. His voice cracked slightly. But I didn't soften. Then you should have asked, I replied. Not come back to take something that isn't yours. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the folded paper, and held it up. This is what taking looks like. The color drained from his face. And just like that, everything was out in the open. The room went silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Ethan stared at the paper in my hand like he hadn't expected me to ever find it. Before he could say anything, my dad walked in. Slowly. Carefully. But there was something different in his face this time. Not confusion. Not weakness. Clarity. I heard enough, he said quietly. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Ethan turned toward him. Dad, I was just. My dad raised his hand slightly. And Ethan stopped talking. I may be sick, my dad continued. But I am not gone. Each word landed heavy. Clear. Final. I am standing in my own house, listening to people talk about my life like I am not even here. The silence deepened. I had never heard my dad speak like this before. Not once. Ethan swallowed. Tried again. I'm just trying to help, he said. But now it sounded weak. Uncertain. Help, my dad repeated. He took a slow step forward. By taking pictures of my house without asking? By handing me papers to sign without explaining them? By deciding where I should live without talking to me first? Each question hit harder than the last. Ethan didn't answer. Because he couldn't. My dad looked at him for a long moment, then said something that broke more than the silence. My own son watched my face, waiting for me to be tired enough to give up. Ethan's eyes dropped. My mom stood frozen in the doorway, hand over her mouth, tears in her eyes. I didn't raise you like that, my dad said softly. That sentence hurt more than anything else. Ethan grabbed his glass of water from the counter, set it down harder than he needed to. Some of it spilled. I needed help, he said again. This time louder, more desperate. I had no options. I stepped forward. And that gives you the right to take his? I asked. He didn't look at me. Because he knew. There was no good answer. Just silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. After a moment, he walked past me. Into the living room. picked up his suitcase, came back toward the door. He stopped just before leaving, turned around, looked at both of us. "This isn't over," he said. But it didn't sound like a threat anymore. It sounded like someone who had already lost. Then he walked out. The door closed. And just like that, he was gone. But the damage stayed. The house felt different. Quieter. Heavier. That evening, my dad sat on the porch, holding his coffee, looking at the water. But he didn't walk to the dock. Not that day. Not the next. I came every morning, made breakfast, sat with my mom, watched him sit still. I didn't push him. I couldn't. Because the whole point was that it had to be his choice. If I forced him, I would become the same thing Ethan was trying to be. Control instead of support. On the fourth morning, he finally spoke. "Megan," he said. I looked up. He met my eyes. "Am I a project to you?" The question hit harder than anything Ethan had done. "Are you taking care of me?" he continued slowly. "Or are you managing me?" I took a deep breath. Because I knew this moment mattered. "Dad," I said gently, "I built this house so you wouldn't need anyone to manage you." He watched me closely. "If I wanted control," I continued, "I would have made everything easier, but also more limiting. I would have added railings everywhere. I would have hired someone to follow you around. I would have made sure you never had to try." Pause. But I didn't. I stepped a little closer. I made the doors wider, so you could walk through them on your own. I built the path, so you could choose to walk it. I didn't take your independence. I made space for it. The silence that followed felt different. Lighter. He looked at me for a long time. Then something in his expression softened. Like a weight had lifted. He nodded slightly. Then he set his cup down. Stood up. Slowly. Carefully. And walked inside. A minute later, he came back. Wearing his shoes. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. I followed him to the porch. And stopped. This wasn't my walk. It was his. He stepped forward. Onto the path. One step at a time. Slow. Unsteady. But determined. I stood there, holding my breath. Watching. He kept going. Halfway. Then further. Until finally, he reached the dock. On his own. He sat down on the bench. Lifted his cup. Took a small sip. And turned his face toward the sun. I felt my eyes fill. But I didn't cry. This moment wasn't about loss. It was about something being found again. My mom came and stood beside me, her hand resting on my arm. "He went," she whispered. I nodded. "He chose to," I said softly. Days passed. Then weeks. And slowly things returned. Not to how they were before, but to something better. Something stronger. My dad walked to the dock every morning again. Not perfectly. Not easily. But willingly. That was enough. One evening, he handed me a folded note. I opened it. His handwriting was shaky. But clear. "You did not control me." Pause. "You saw me." I read it twice. Then folded it carefully, and kept it. Because those words meant more than anything else. A few weeks later, I got a call from a lawyer. An old friend of my dad's. He told me my dad had updated his will. I didn't know. He hadn't said anything. When I asked him about it later, he just nodded. "The house goes to you," he said simply. I shook my head. "You don't have to do that." He raised his hand slightly, stopping me. "I'm not doing it out of anger," he said. "I'm doing it because, for the first time in a long time, I made a choice for myself. I didn't argue. Because I understood. He wasn't giving me the house. He was claiming his voice. His control. His life. And that mattered more than anything. That evening, we sat on the porch together. Watching the water. Quiet. Peaceful. The porch light turned on, just as the sun disappeared. My dad had wired it himself. And he still turned it on every night. Not because he had to, but because he could. I built my father a house. But what I really gave him was a way to remain himself. And every morning, when he walks to that dock, slow, steady on his own, I am reminded of something he taught me a long time ago. The small things are never small, because sometimes they are everything.